Apply today.
9:11 in the morning. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. He is Dr. Ralph May, who joins us quite often to talk about mental health issues, and I asked him to come in for a specific reason today. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. I know that you love to get outdoors and exercise. You're going to have the week to do it this week, aren't you?
Well, the humidity is going to be a little rough, but you have to pace yourself when you're working out in hot and humid conditions. So
yeah, well, I should say this is my kind of weather.
Oh, you like this?
I'd love this. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I wanted to talk to you this morning about mental health for caregivers. I was reading last week a study of people who are caregivers for those afflicted with dementia or with Alzheimer's disease. They have particular and not unique to them, but maybe more intensive issues with their own mental health because of the stresses of what they are doing. So I thought it would be good to talk with you about that, because there are a lot of people who find themselves, especially with today's economy, with the paucity of caregiving options now, as opposed to maybe 5 or 10 years ago.
Right.
These folks are taking on quite the burden, and it is a burden to them, and mentally they need to be cared for, number one, but they need to be able to recognize when they have problems.
Well, if you look at individuals who are, we call them unpaid caregivers of individuals who are disabled or impaired. If you look at what happened during COVID, the rate of suicide in that group was one of the groups that went up significantly during COVID. And this is not a surprise, because the burden, as you said, on those individuals in caretaking, usually elderly parents, and then also usually they're the sandwich generation. They're taking care of children, or kids, and so they've got burdens on both sides of the equation, and they're trying to take care of parents who suffer from an illness, a disease that is gradually taking them away. Sundowner syndrome, Alzheimer's, sometimes called, where the individual slowly degrades and deteriorates. And it's psychologically, just to watch that happen to somebody you care about is very, very difficult. But then the practical burdens, as the disease progresses from mild, moderate to severe, the person becomes increasingly unable to care for themselves, increasingly unable to be left alone, increasingly unable to take care of their basic life needs. And so the burden of finding help, no one can do that by themselves, by the way. No matter how much you love your parents, or no matter how much you love people who have taken care of you and you're taking care of them, no one can take care of someone with dementia on their own. You need to draw in supports. You need to draw in family supports first, but then professional supports are still available. First of all, when I was doing my updated research on Alzheimer's and some of the current stuff going on in the research, the National Institute on Aging has a great website. I mean, a fantastic website, the National Institute of Health, the National Institute on Aging.gov. Anyone can go to it. You can download all kind of free good stuff, legal information, caregiving information, support groups, national hotline numbers you can use for advice. Tremendous amount of great information there for the general public to use. So I would recommend that when you're looking for resources, and here in Indiana, we're fortunate. We have the area on aging, which has a lot of home health services and a lot of community-based services that can help. And so I think one of the most important barriers to overcome is, first of all, recognize the illness in your parent, recognize the illness in the person you're needing to care for, and then knowing what you need to do to help them. When you first, dementia is a sneaky thing, Todd. I mean, forgetfulness comes with aging, right? We were talking about aging earlier, and normal forgetfulness, we call it age-related cognitive decline. We have a name for everything in psychology. Age-related cognitive decline is normal. It just comes, you start forgetting people's names, you start forgetting newly learned information. The old stuff sticks, but the new stuff doesn't stick as well. Sometimes that beginning of the memory problems can be indicative of dementia, but not all the time. Dementia then becomes more of a process of forgetting important things, like where you live, how to get to the store, how to take care of turning off the stove, how to manage your life in a basic way, and then communication starts to be impaired in more severe forms than delusions, hallucinations, inability to recognize relatives, reality progresses. So this is a disease that you can't stop. You can slow it down. Treatments can slow it down. We know that if you keep the person active and structured, You know, if you keep them active, one of the most important things in early dementia is for the caregivers to keep their person active, keep them in a structure, keep them in something they're familiar with, that they enjoy, keep good activities going for them. Exercise, even walking, any kind of exercise is good. Of course, diet's always important in everything we do, but it's important as a caregiver to recognize your own needs. As you're starting to care for your parent and your kids, it's easy to neglect yourself. It's easy to forget about what you need. And if you forget about what you need, the only thing that's going to do is create another person who can't function very well.
Two particular stresses that just appear to me. Number one, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week thing.
Yes.
It does not end. Number two, the caregiver is in their own mind also having to deal with the fact that they remember mom or dad as someone who was young, highly functional,
Taking care of them.
was taking care of them, exactly. And now that role is reversed, and increasingly they find mom or dad are not able to function, number one, but even relate back and forth with you, number two. Those are really, really stressful.
Well, it's a long-term grieving process when you get right down to it, Todd. It's the letting go of the person you knew who took care of you. And depression is so common, by the way, in caregivers. You know, it is just one of the most common thing all caregivers face. Sadness is normal, grief is normal, but depression, just a deep sadness that doesn't go away, you know, where the person starts themselves feeling frustrated and hopeless. And so that's why a caregiver has to maintain monitoring of their own mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to decline as well, and it's going to wear you down as well. And then you're not going to be able to help your own children or work or take care of yourself, which is not certainly what your parent would have wanted for you. Sure. And so you have to remember that as well.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned resources such as the Department of Aging. They've got wonderful resources up there. What are some of the things that people should be doing to guard their mental health right now if they are in that situation where they're caring for somebody with Alzheimer's or with dementia and they're experiencing some of what you've just talked about?
The research shows very clearly that for caregivers, a caregiver support network is critical. Talking to other people who are going through what you're going through and kind of problem solving together and talking about the emotions of loss and grief and the challenges you face. Support groups are extremely important for caregivers, that they have connections with other people, even if it's online, even if you can't necessarily get a local group. Online is very important as well. Recognizing that if you're getting worn down, you're getting depressed, and you're not able to function as well, you need to reach out for support. Even professional mental health support is good in some cases where the depression has entrenched yourself. And in Indiana, of course, we have resources available that you can call. You know, our crisis number is available 24/7, where you can call and just talk to someone. You know, that's the 877-333-2470 number, which we established here for everybody in Indiana that has any kind of mental health or addiction problem or anything, can call anytime and get somebody to talk to. So you have mental health resources available to you 24/7. One of the things that's very hard, and you mentioned 24/7, sleep becomes disrupted with someone who has dementia. Sure. So you no longer have a break. You no longer have that, you know, I'm going to sleep tonight while they sleep, because they wake up in the middle of the night and start wandering, you know, become agitated. And so you don't have a break. So sometimes you just, at 2 a.m, you might need to call someone and say, I'm really struggling, you know, just so you can feel like there's somebody out there who understands what you're going through.
Yeah, all of those things are things that, you know, we know they're happening. We see them happening. I think we all have a bit of a Superman complex where we think that we can handle it all ourselves. And one of these days, these burdens will lighten up and I'll feel better. And maybe I just need to get used to dealing with what I'm dealing with. It's not that at all.
No, and some of the harder decisions become, as the disease progresses, that no one can keep someone in their own home for the rest of their lives. It sometimes reaches a point where you have to talk about nursing home placement, skilled nursing home placement, specialized care. And those decisions are difficult. I mean, we went through that with my own father, and it was, my mother struggled mightily with wanting to take care of him at home, you know, kept him at home probably longer than we should have, you know, until finally he fell. And there was no choice. You know, he had to go into skilled nursing care. It's a difficult decision when particularly if your loved one has progressed in their impairment, where they don't recognize how bad it is and how hard it is for their caregivers. And sometimes you have to make some very tough decisions. So I urge families to talk with one another clearly and understand the circumstances very well and talk to the person's physician. The physician can be an extremely important resource in knowing the person's health in general. I want to point out that when a person first develops dementia, you have to get a good physical first because there's a lot of other things in elderly people who have urinary tract infections. Often will reflect symptoms of dementia. It's not dementia. And so you have to have a good physical examination to make sure that dementia is what you're dealing with because some forms are reversible. But once that's happened, your medical support team are very important in the process of knowing what decisions you need to make.
As that deterioration continues, people can see the end of the road where
Yes.
that person is going to pass away. So quite often at the same time that they're helping this person and caring for this person, they're making arrangements
Right.
and they're pursuing whatever legal things they need to do in order to ease the transition at the end. So that even adds to the burden.
It does because you're grieving the person in advance. And sometimes, maybe many family members describe that the person I knew and the person I loved and my parent was gone a long time ago. Their body's still here, but they're gone. And that grieving process can be very powerful and very hard. And you've got to you have to proceed as if the inevitable is going to happen because the disease eventually does take you. It does eventually end up terminal. The disease itself doesn't kill you. It's the inability of the body to continue to function that eventually causes death. And it can take a long time. I mean, some people have lived with Alzheimer's disease in skilled nursing facilities for a decade or more. I mean, some people live a long time. Some people don't. And so you have to be prepared, though, to let go of them in a kind of a progressive way and not feel guilty. You know, guilt is a big thing, Todd. You know, like, you know, they took care of me. Why can't I take care of them? There's a realistic thing here that people have to recognize is the disease is the disease. It's nobody's fault. It just is the disease. And because we're living longer, actually Alzheimer's is usually a disease of later life. The older you get, the greater the chance. There's some estimates in the data that people 85 years and above, 50% probably will have Alzheimer's the longer you live. So this is not a small thing as we age in our society.
And perhaps those of us who are in situations we're not the caregiver, we need to be able to look at that person who is the caregiver, see where we can help,
Right.
And at the very least make sure that we're not adding to their burden by casting any sort of guilt or aspersions upon them for the way that they are doing things.
Yes, I think we have to check our own emotions at the door when it comes to our reactions about nursing homes and Alzheimer's, and remember that the people who are taking care, the caregivers, are really stressed and need our support all the time.
Good advice this morning from Dr. Ralph May for people who do want to make that phone call that you were talking about. What is the number that they should be considering?
In Indiana County for mental health support any time of the day or night, it is 877-333-2470. A therapist mans that number 24/7, 365 days a year.
Dr. May, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.